Part 1. The Forgotten Omega. The scent of nerves filled the great hall like a cloud. Lyra stood at the very back of the line, where she always stood. Last. Forgotten. The place reserved for the pack's most disappointing Omega. Lyra tugged at the simple gray dress she'd borrowed from her aunt. Unlike the other girls with their silks and jewelry, she hadn't bothered with anything special. What was the point? No one would choose her anyway. Remember to smile, her aunt had instructed this morning, the only family member who still believed in false hope. You never know what might happen at a choosing ceremony. But Lyra did know. 21 years of life had taught her exactly what to expect. Nothing. The great hall of the Northern Pines Pack was transformed for the occasion, ancient wooden beams draped with silver and blue banners. Nearly 300 werewolves crowded the space, their excitement a tangible force. At the front, on a raised dais, stood High Alpha Thorn Black. He was impossible to miss, taller than any other male, with shoulders that strained his formal black jacket. Beside him stood his council members, gray-muzzled elders and battle-scarred warriors. This wasn't just any choosing ceremony. This was for their king, the first time in 15 years that an alpha of his stature would select a mate. "Gods, look at him," whispered Kira, the beta girl standing in front of Lyra. "I'd let him mark me right here on the floor." Her friend giggled. "If he picks you, the alliance celebration will last for days." "When he picks me," Kira corrected, tossing her perfectly styled blonde hair. "My father practically promised. The council wants a strong political match, and my bloodline is perfect." Lyra tried to tune them out. Kira Mason had been reminding everyone for months that her father was the alpha of the Eastern Ridge Pack, that her mother was from a prestigious Southern bloodline, that she would make the perfect queen. Lyra glanced at her bare wrist where other wolves wore their pack markings, delicate tattoo-like symbols that appeared naturally when a wolf shifted for the first time. Hers remained empty, a blank canvas that told the story her pack whispered behind her back. Lyra Foster was wolfless. Next, only Kira stood between Lyra and her turn now. The beta girl stepped forward with practiced grace, her silk dress rustling softly. "Alpha Black, I present myself for consideration," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "I am Kira Mason, daughter of Alpha James Mason of the Eastern Ridge Pack. My bloodline is pure back 7 generations, and I would bring honor to your house and strength to your pack." Thorn's expression remained unchanged as he looked down at her. "Thank you for your presentation. You may step aside." Kira's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the response she'd expected. Next. Lyra took a deep breath and forced her feet forward. She could hear the whispers following her. Why is she even here? The wolfless girl? What a waste of the alpha's time. She kept her eyes down. "Alpha Black," she said quietly. "I am Lyra Foster." That was all. No illustrious bloodline to recite, no family connections to flaunt. Just Lyra, the orphan girl raised by a distant aunt after her parents died in a territory dispute. Thorn said nothing, and Lyra risked a glance upward. His face remained impassive, but his eyes, those burning amber eyes, studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Step aside," he finally said, and Lyra nodded, relief washing through her. She turned to join the line of rejected girls, but before she could take a step, a voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Thank the moon goddess, that's over," Kira said loudly. "Imagine thinking a defective Omega could stand among real wolves." Lyra froze. The hall fell silent, the kind of heavy quiet that follows something inexcusable. She should keep walking, should pretend she hadn't heard. But something inside her, something that had been compressed and contained for 21 years, suddenly cracked. Slowly, Lyra turned back. "What did you call me?" Kira's perfect eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Oh, did I offend?" "I simply stated facts. You don't belong here, little ghost girl. You don't belong anywhere. You're not even a real wolf." The collective intake of breath from the crowd was audible. Lyra was aware of the elders shifting uncomfortably, of Alpha Thorn watching with unnerving focus. She should apologize, should back down. Instead, she took a step forward. "You know what I find interesting, Kira?" Lyra said, her voice steady and clear. "How desperately you cling to bloodlines and status, as if that's all that makes a wolf worthy, as if cruelty is somehow a sign of strength." Kira's face flushed. "How dare you?" "I dare because I have nothing to lose," Lyra continued, something fierce unfurling in her chest. "While you've spent your life being handed everything because of your father's name, I've survived on the edges of a pack that never wanted me. And yet here I stand, still breathing, still fighting. So tell me, who's really the stronger wolf?" The silence in the hall was absolute now. Lyra could hear her own heart pounding. She'd never spoken like this before, never stood up to anyone, let alone the daughter of a powerful alpha. But the words kept coming, as if some other force was speaking through her. "You call me defective because I haven't shifted, because I don't have a wolf's mark, but at least I don't need to tear others down to feel worthy of my place. Your bloodline may be pure, Kira, but your heart is poison." Kira's face contorted with rage. "You insignificant little—" "Enough." The single word cut through the hall like thunder. Alpha Thorn had risen to his feet, his massive frame casting a shadow across the dais. But it wasn't his commanding presence that silenced the hall. It was the flare of red that suddenly illuminated his eyes, the unmistakable glow of an alpha wolf stirring beneath the human skin. Lyra felt it before she understood it, a pull in her chest, like an invisible cord suddenly drawn tight. Across the dais, Alpha Thorn's expression transformed from controlled neutrality to something wild and primal. His nostrils flared as he drew in her scent. "Everyone out," he growled. "Now." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd, but no one dared question an alpha command. "This isn't possible," Lyra heard Kira hiss as she passed. "She's nothing. She's no one." Soon the massive hall was empty except for Lyra and the Alpha, who remained on the dais, his powerful frame rigid with restraint. "Alpha Black," she managed. "I apologize for disrupting the ceremony." "I don't know what came over me." He descended the dais in 3 fluid steps, moving with a predator's grace. He stopped, nostrils flaring again as he scented her fear. "Don't!" he said, his voice rough. "Don't fear me." "Why did you send everyone away?" Thorn took a careful step toward her, then another. When he was just an arm's length away, he stopped, towering over her smaller frame. "Because," he said softly, "when you spoke, when you finally showed your fire, my wolf woke up." "What do you mean?" "I mean that my wolf has been dormant for years. Silent. Until you challenged that girl and showed what you're really made of." And then she felt it, a burning sensation at her wrist, like gentle fire licking across her skin. Lyra looked down in shock to see delicate lines appearing on her formerly blank flesh, swirling and connecting into an intricate pattern, a crescent moon cradling a single star, a wolf's mark, her wolf's mark. "Impossible," she breathed. Thorn's smile was triumphant. "Not impossible, just waiting. For me. For this." He finally closed the distance between them, his massive hand cradling her cheek with surprising gentleness. The contact sent a shock through Lyra's system, a jolt of recognition and rightness. "My wolf knows what I've been too blind to see," he murmured. "The mate bond doesn't make mistakes, little wolf." "Mate bond? No, there must be some error. I'm just an omega, I'm—" "Mine," he finished, the word rumbling from deep in his chest. "You're mine." Outside the hall, a wolf howled, a long, triumphant call that was quickly joined by others. The pack was responding to something they sensed even from a distance. Their alpha had found his mate. Part 2, crowned in whispers. Dawn broke over the northern pines territory, painting the forest in hues of gold. Lyra stood at the window of a room that wasn't hers, watching the early light filter through ancient trees. She hadn't slept. How could she? when her entire world had been upended in a single night. She glanced down at her wrist, tracing the intricate mark that hadn't been there yesterday. The crescent moon and star seemed to shimmer slightly in the morning light, as if alive beneath her skin. After the revelation in the great hall, Thorn had escorted her to this guest chamber in the pack house, a room fit for visiting dignitaries. He'd left her at the door with a promise to return in the morning. A soft knock made her jump. Instead of Thorn, a young woman entered carrying a tray. "Good morning, my lady," she said, bobbing a curtsy. "Alpha Black has sent these for you to choose from." She gestured to a rack of clothing that a second servant was wheeling into the room, dresses in various colors and styles, all clearly expensive. "There's no need to call me lady," Lyra said, uncomfortable with the deference. The servant girl's eyes widened. "But you're—" She stopped herself. "I'll tell the Alpha you're awake." After a quick bath, Lyra dressed in a silver-gray gown. It fell in soft folds around her slender frame, making her look like something from another world. Another knock came, firmer this time. "Enter," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. The door swung open to reveal Thorn, filling the frame with his massive presence. He'd changed into more casual clothes, dark jeans and a Henley that did nothing to hide the powerful muscles of his chest and arms. He stopped in the doorway, his amber eyes sweeping over her with naked appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said, his deep voice sending a tremor through her. "Thank you for the clothes." "And the room. But I'd like some explanations now." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Direct. I like that." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Walk with me. There's something I need to show you." "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening," Lyra insisted. "Last night you said something about a mate bond. That's not possible. I'm an Omega. I don't even have—" She stopped, remembering the mark now decorating her wrist. "I didn't have a wolf." "And yet now you do." Thorn moved closer. "Tell me what you know about mate bonds, Lyra." "They're rare. Sacred. When a wolf finds their true mate, it's for life. And they can't be denied. Once established, the wolves and their humans are bound together. To reject the bond means—" She trailed off. "Means pain, sickness, eventually death for one or both parties," Thorn finished. "The moon goddess doesn't take rejection of her gifts lightly." Lyra took a step back. "So I have no choice? I'm just yours now?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You always have a choice, little wolf. But before you make it, there's something you should understand. Come with me." Thorn led her through richly appointed corridors that hummed with pack activity. Everywhere they went, wolves stopped and stared, conversations halting mid-sentence as they passed. "They're talking about me," she murmured. "Of course they are." Thorn's hand came to rest at the small of her back. "You're the Omega who awakened the Alpha's wolf, the girl who stood up to a Beta twice her status in front of the entire pack, the orphan who now carries a royal mark." Lyra nearly stumbled. "Royal mark? What do you mean?" Thorn led her through a set of heavy wooden doors and into what appeared to be a private study. Bookshelves lined the walls, and a massive desk dominated one end of the room. He closed the doors behind them, then moved to a cabinet near the desk. He withdrew a leather case and brought it to where Lyra stood. "Give me your wrist," he said softly. Hesitantly, Lyra extended her arm. Thorn's fingers were warm as they encircled her wrist, his thumb brushing over her mark. The touch sent a jolt of heat up her arm. "The crescent moon and star," he said, his voice low. "It's not just any wolf mark, Lyra. It's the royal mark of the black bloodline, the sign of Luna's chosen rulers." He opened the leather case to reveal an ancient-looking dagger with an ornate hilt. The pommel was set with a dark stone, and etched into its surface was the exact same symbol that now adorned Lyra's wrist. "This has been passed down through 20 generations of black alphas," Thorn said. "The mark appears on only 2 types of wolves, those born to the ruling bloodline and their true mates." Lyra stared at the symbol. That's impossible. I'm no one. You're exactly who you were always meant to be, Thorn interrupted. The question is, who is that Lyra Foster? Because I don't think it's the quiet, invisible girl you've been pretending to be. Before Lyra could respond, a sharp knock came at the door, followed by the entrance of a silver-templed elder. Alpha, forgive the interruption, he said, bowing slightly. The council has assembled. They're requesting your presence, and hers. Thorn's jaw tightened. I'll be there when I'm ready, Marcus. With respect, Alpha. The delegations from the eastern and southern packs arrived an hour ago. Alpha Mason is particularly insistent. Kira's father, Lyra breathed, a cold weight settling in her stomach. When the elder had gone, Thorn turned back to Lyra. You don't have to face them yet. I can handle the council. Something in his offer of protection both warmed her and pricked at her pride. No, she said, straightening her spine. I won't hide. A slow smile spread across Thorn's face, genuine and approving. Good. Because there's something else you should know before we go in there. He moved closer. I haven't had an active wolf in 5 years. Not since the border war that killed my father. The council has been waiting, watching for signs of weakness. Why are you telling me this? His fingers brushed her cheek. Because you need to understand what it means that my wolf responded to you. That he chose you as our mate. It means you woke something in me that nothing and no one else could reach. And what does that mean for the council? For the other packs? It means, he said, his voice dropping to a rumble, that they're about to witness the return of the true Alpha. And they're going to have to accept that his mate is an Omega they've all overlooked. The council chamber was a circular room dominated by a massive round table. When Lyra entered at Thorn's side, 12 pairs of eyes turned to look at them, some curious, some calculating, some openly hostile. Thorn guided her to the head of the table, where 2 chairs stood side by side. With a subtle nod, he indicated she should take the one on his right, the traditional place for an alpha's mate. At the far end of the table sat 2 males and a female she didn't recognize, their clothing marking them as visitors from another pack. But it was the man seated directly opposite Thorn who commanded the most attention. Tall and broad-shouldered, though not as imposing as Thorn, he had the same golden hair as Kira and the same cold blue eyes. Alpha James Mason of the Eastern Ridge Pack. Alpha Black, he said, his voice smooth as silk over steel. How good of you to join us, and with your unexpected companion. Alpha Mason, welcome to Northern Pines. I trust your journey was comfortable. It was, until I learned that my daughter had been publicly humiliated at what was supposed to be your choosing ceremony. Mason's gaze shifted to Lyra, dismissive and cold. By this girl. One of the northern warriors stiffened. Watch your tone when addressing our Alpha's mate, Mason. Mate? The Eastern Alpha's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Is that what we're calling this arrangement? A convenient excuse to avoid a politically advantageous union with my daughter? Lyra's cheeks burned with shame and anger, but Thorn's hand covered hers on the table, his touch surprisingly gentle. The mate bond is not a matter of convenience, Alpha Mason, Thorn said dangerously. It's sacred law, as old as our kind itself. Surely you're not suggesting I should deny the will of the moon goddess? Mason's jaw tightened. What I'm suggesting is that this is rather convenient timing. After years of dormancy, your wolf suddenly wakes for an Omega with no bloodline, no standing, and no wolf of her own. He snorted. Forgive me if I find that difficult to believe. She has a wolf, Thorn countered, and a mark, my mark. Marcus leaned forward. Alpha, perhaps it would be wise to have the girl's status verified by the pack healer, just to put any questions to rest. Her name, Thorn said with deadly quiet, is Lyra, and she sits at this table as my equal, not as a subject to be examined and verified. Lyra squeezed Thorn's hand. It's all right. I have nothing to hide. Elder Serena, the pack healer, was summoned. She was older than Lyra had expected, with a crown of silver braids and eyes like amber. She carried herself with quiet dignity. "Ah, the foster girl. I delivered you, did you know that? Your mother was a fighter, 30 hours of labor, and she never once complained." The casual mention of her mother, a woman Lyra had no memory of, struck her like a physical blow. "You knew my mother?" "Of course. Emma was a gifted healer before the border war took her. Your father, too, Samuel, was one of our best trackers." Lyra extended her marked wrist. Serena's fingers were cool as they traced the lines of the crescent and star. "A true mark," she pronounced. "And not just any mark. The royal mark of the Black bloodline. The bond is genuine. This girl is Alpha Black's true mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself." Mason's face darkened with barely suppressed rage. "This is absurd. She's an Omega. Omegas don't become queens." "Perhaps that's exactly why she was chosen," the blonde woman from the visiting delegation suddenly spoke. "The pack needs healing after years of war. Who better than an Omega to bring that balance?" "An interesting perspective, Alpha Isolde," Thorne said, "especially coming from the Southern Crescent Pack, which has the most to gain from our continued division." The woman, Alpha Isolde, smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just slightly too sharp. "I've lived long enough to recognize the hand of fate, Thorne Black." Mason pushed back from the table. "I will not sit here and be made a fool of." "My daughter was promised consideration, a political alliance that would strengthen both our packs." "I made no such promise," Thorne replied evenly. "Then this alliance is over before it began." Mason straightened. "The Eastern Ridge Pack withdraws from the Northern Alliance negotiations." Lyra found herself on her feet before she'd made the conscious decision to stand. "Alpha Mason, your daughter called me defective in front of the entire pack. She mocked me for a condition I had no control over. Is that the behavior you expect from a potential queen?" Mason's cold eyes narrowed on her. "You dare?" "Yes, I dare," Lyra continued, finding strength in her rising anger. "I spent my life being overlooked, being whispered about and dismissed. I never complained, never caused trouble. But last night, when your daughter publicly humiliated me, I finally stood up for myself, and that is when Alpha Black's wolf recognized me." She turned to look at the assembled council members. "I don't know why I was chosen. I don't know what makes me worthy of this mark, but I do know that a leader is more than their bloodline or their status. A true leader sees the worth in others, especially those who have been cast aside." The chamber fell silent. Thorne was watching her with something like wonder in his eyes, while Mason looked as if he'd swallowed something bitter. "Well spoken, girl," Elder Serena said softly. "You have more of your mother in you than you know." Alpha Isolde nodded slowly. "I believe we've found our answer. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Alpha Mason." Mason's face flushed with barely contained rage. "This isn't over," he spat, turning on his heel and storming from the chamber. As the door slammed behind him, Marcus sighed heavily. "That complicates matters." "We'll find another way," Thorne said firmly. "I won't sacrifice the mate bond for politics." Isolde rose gracefully from her seat. "The Southern Crescent Pack remains open to alliance, Alpha Black. Perhaps with your new mate's fresh perspective, we can find common ground where there was none before." She approached Lyra, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. Up close, Lyra could see that her eyes weren't quite human, the irises slightly elongated, the color a metallic gold rather than brown. "You've stepped into a viper's nest, little Omega," Isolde murmured, her voice pitched for Lyra's ears alone. "But I think you have more venom than they realize." She smiled again, revealing those two sharp teeth. "We will speak again soon." Despite everything, the hostility, the politics, the uncertain future, Lyra felt something stirring inside her, something wild and new that echoed the mark on her wrist. Her wolf was waking up, and she was ready to howl. Part 3. Awakening. The forest whispered secrets at midnight. Lyra stood barefoot in a small clearing, her breath fogging in the cool night air. Above her, the waxing moon cast silver light through pine branches, dappling the ground with shifting patterns. "Focus," Thorn instructed, his deep voice quiet but firm. "Close your eyes. Listen to the forest. Feel your wolf." 3 days had passed since the council meeting. 3 days of whispers following her through corridors, of Thorn keeping a respectful distance while his eyes burned with barely contained hunger. 3 days of feeling something wild stirring beneath her skin, demanding release. Lyra closed her eyes, trying to quiet her racing thoughts. The forest sounds intensified immediately, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. And beneath it all, something else, a heartbeat that wasn't her own. "I can feel her," she whispered. "She's impatient." Thorn circled her slowly. "She's been waiting a long time. Tell me what she wants." "Freedom," she said. "She wants to run, to hunt." Her eyes fluttered open, finding Thorn watching her with that intense amber gaze. "To claim." Something flashed in his expression, hunger, approval, need. He stepped closer. "The first shift is the hardest," he said, his voice rough-edged. "Your body will resist the change. It will hurt, but once your wolf breaks free, you'll never be the same." "What if I can't do it? What if she's not strong enough?" Thorn's hand cupped her cheek. "She's strong enough. She's a queen wolf, Lyra. She was born to rule at my side. Tell me what to do." "Feel the moon on your skin," Thorn instructed. "Let it call to your blood, to the ancient part of you that remembers running wild. Your wolf knows the way." Lyra tilted her face upward, letting the moonlight wash over her. She felt it like a physical caress, a silver warmth that seeped through her skin and into her veins. The sensation began as a pleasant warmth, then intensified into something hotter, sharper. The first spasm caught her by surprise, bending her double with a gasp. Pain lanced through her bones, a deep ache that felt like they were liquefying, reforming. Her skin prickled, then burned, as if something within her was clawing its way out. "Thorn!" she gasped, falling to her knees. "It hurts." In an instant, he was beside her, one large hand bracing her back. "I know, little wolf. The first time always does, but you're stronger than the pain. Let your wolf take over." Another wave hit her, more intense than the first. Lyra cried out, her fingers digging into the soft earth as her body contorted. Sweat beaded on her brow despite the cool night air. "I can't," she panted. "I can't do this." "You can," Thorn insisted, his voice a low growl now. "You defied a beta in front of the entire pack. You faced down Alpha Mason in the council chamber. You survived years of being outcast and alone." His hand moved to the nape of her neck, gripping firmly. "You are not weak, Lyra Foster. You are mine, and my mate is not a quitter." Something about his words sparked a fire in her chest. Lyra raised her head, meeting his gaze through the curtain of her dark hair. She saw his eyes widen slightly as hers changed, the gray giving way to a luminous silver. "There she is," Thorn breathed. "Let her come through, Lyra." The pain peaked, a white-hot agony that tore a scream from her throat. But beneath the scream was something else, a howl wild and triumphant. Lyra felt her bones shifting, rearranging. Fur erupted across her skin in a wave, silver white and gleaming in the moonlight. Her senses exploded into hyper-clarity. Suddenly she could smell everything, from the rich loam beneath her paws to the musky, intoxicating scent of the male wolf beside her. Thorn had shifted as well, his massive black wolf form towering over her smaller, more slender shape. His amber eyes glowed in the darkness, fixed on her with pride and desire. "You did it," his voice echoed in her mind, the telepathic bond between mated wolves activating. "Look at you, my silver queen." Lyra staggered slightly, adjusting to her new form. "I feel free, powerful, alive." Thorn's chuff of approval rumbled through the clearing. "Run with me." The forest opened before them, a nocturnal playground of scents and sounds. She followed Thorn's lead at first, learning from the way he navigated fallen logs and dense undergrowth. But soon her wolf was urging her to go faster, to push harder. Without consciously deciding to, Lyra accelerated, overtaking Thorn with a burst of speed that surprised them both. She heard his delighted growl behind her, felt him giving chase. The moon lit their path as they raced through the territory, 2 wolves, one midnight black, one silver white, weaving between ancient pines. A sudden scent on the breeze made both wolves stiffen. Lyra's hackles rose instinctively as she identified the smell, wolf, but not pack. Stranger. Thorn moved instantly, positioning himself between Lyra and the direction of the scent. Stay behind me. Through the trees emerged 3 wolves, 2 gray, 1 brown, their postures low and threatening. Eastern Ridge Scouts, Thorn growled, on Northern Pines territory without permission. The lead wolf took a step forward, his muzzle wrinkling to reveal sharp teeth. We didn't come for you, Black. Just the girl. Alpha Mason wants a word with his daughter's replacement. Fury rolled off Thorn in palpable waves. You dare threaten my mate on my land? The scouts hesitated, exchanging glances. Clearly they hadn't expected to encounter the alpha himself, and certainly not an alpha in the full throes of a mate protection instinct. Before Thorn could respond, Lyra stepped forward, moving to stand beside him rather than behind. My name is Lyra, she projected firmly, and I am the mate of Alpha Thorn Black. If Alpha Mason has concerns, he can address them through proper channels, not by sending scouts to threaten me in the night. The scouts seemed taken aback by her directness. The brown wolf let out a low growl. Thorn's answering growl was like thunder. Leave, now. The lead scout backed away. This isn't over. Mason doesn't give up what he considers his. When they had disappeared, Lyra turned to Thorn. What did he mean? Thorn's mind voice was grim. Territory. Power. His daughter on the northern throne. Take your pick. He nudged her back toward Packlands. We need to get back. It's not safe out here with Eastern scouts crossing boundaries. They ran in silence for several minutes, Lyra's mind churning with questions. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. Why would Mason risk war over a mate choice? It's not just about the mate bond, it's about power. For generations, the 3 packs, Northern, Eastern, and Southern, have maintained an uneasy balance. A daughter as queen, grandchildren with black blood, it would have given him leverage he's coveted for years. And now he sees you as the obstacle to his ambition. The implication sent a chill through Lyra. So what do we do? They had reached the edge of the pack compound. Thorn led her to a secluded spot where they could shift back without being observed. The return to human form was easier than the initial shift, though still disorienting. Thorn shifted beside her, his massive human form just as imposing as his wolf. He quickly wrapped a blanket around her shoulders before pulling on the jeans he'd left stashed nearby. We strengthen the bond, he answered her question. A mate bond in its early stages can be challenged, but once it's fully sealed, not even an alpha as powerful as Mason would dare interfere. You mean? The claiming bite, he confirmed, his voice dropping to that rumble that made her insides clench. The physical consummation of the bond. His eyes traced over her face. But not until you're ready, Lyra. I won't rush you, no matter what Mason threatens. The tenderness in his voice, contrasting with the predatory hunger in his eyes, made her heart flip in her chest. And if I'm ready sooner than you think? Something dark and possessive flashed across his features. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. Don't tempt me, little wolf. I've been holding back since the moment I scented you. Before she could respond, a shout from the direction of the pack house broke the moment. Alpha Black! A young beta guard was running toward them. There's been an incident. Elder Marcus sent me to find you. Thorn's arm came around Lyra protectively. What kind of incident? An attack, sir. At the southern border, one of our patrols was ambushed. 3 warriors injured, 1 critical. Eastern wolves? Thorn demanded, already moving toward the pack house, keeping Lyra close to his side. No, sir. The survivors say it wasn't wolves at all. It was something else. Something with teeth and claws, but not shifter. Not human either. Later, in the healing chambers, Lyra stood beside Thorn as Elder Serena worked over the most grievously injured warrior. The man on the table was barely recognizable as human. Deep gashes had laid open his chest and abdomen. The scent of blood and fear was overwhelming. "He's been unconscious since they brought him in," Serena reported grimly. "Lost too much blood. Even with shifter healing, it's touch and go." Thorn moved to the warrior's side. "Kai, can you hear me?" The wounded man stirred slightly. Alpha tried to fight." "Save your strength. Now tell me what attacked you." Kai's breathing was labored, each word clearly costing him. "Not wolves. Bigger. Faster. Eyes like fire." "How many?" "4, maybe 5. Came from shadows. No scent until too late." Kai's hand suddenly shot out, gripping Thorn's wrist with surprising strength. "Not natural, Alpha. Not mortal." A chill ran down Lyra's spine at the warrior's words. Not mortal? What did that mean? Later, in Thorn's study, the War Council discussed the mysterious attack. Alpha Isolde had arrived unexpectedly, claiming knowledge of the creatures. "They're called Wendigo," she explained, "ancient spirits that possess humans who've consumed shifter flesh. They're stronger than wolves, faster, and nearly impossible to kill." "If that's true," Thorn said carefully, "why come to us with this information?" "The Southern Pack has never been known for sharing intelligence." "Because this is bigger than old rivalries," Isolde said. "The Wendigo aren't acting randomly. They're being controlled, used as weapons." "By whom?" Marcus demanded. "That is the question, isn't it? Someone powerful. Someone with old magic." Her gaze slid to Lyra. "Someone who doesn't want the Northern and Southern Packs to align." The implication hung in the air. Thorn voiced it first. "You're suggesting Mason is behind this?" Isolde shrugged. "I'm suggesting that the timing is suspicious. These creatures appeared shortly after you rejected his daughter." She turned to Thorn. "I've come to propose a joint defense. My best trackers working with yours to find the source of this threat." Marcus frowned deeply. "The Southern Pack has refused alliance with the Northern Territories for over a century. Why the sudden change of heart?" "Perhaps I recognize a shifting of fates." Isolde's enigmatic eyes found Lyra again. "Your new Luna has brought change to these lands. I merely seek to position my pack on the right side of that change." Back in Thorn's quarters, the weight of the day pressed heavily on Lyra, her first shift, the Eastern Scouts, the Wendigo, and Isolde's warnings all crowding her thoughts. The Alpha's rooms were imposing yet warm, steeped in history and strength. "You should take the bed," Thorn said, gesturing toward an adjoining room where Lyra glimpsed an enormous four-poster. "I'll sleep out here." Despite her exhaustion, Lyra felt a twinge of disappointment. "Is that what you want?" "What I want," he said, his voice a low rumble, "and what is right are two different things. You've had an overwhelming day and you need rest, not complications." "And if I want complications?" The words escaped before she could censor them, surprising them both. In 2 strides, he closed the distance between them, one large hand coming up to cup her face. "Don't tempt me, little wolf," he murmured, his thumb tracing the curve of her lower lip. "My control is not infinite, especially where you're concerned." "I'm not afraid of you, Thorn." "Perhaps you should be." Despite his words, his touch remained gentle, reverent almost. "The claiming is not a simple thing, Lyra. Once I mark you, once we complete the bond, there's no going back. You will be mine in every way, and I—" He swallowed hard. "I am not an easy man to be bound to." "Because you're an alpha? Because I've spent 5 years holding my wolf in check, denying the primal part of myself that wanted to tear apart anything that threatened what's mine." His fingers threaded into her hair, cradling the back of her head. And now that he's awake, now that he's found you, he wants to claim, to possess, to mark you so thoroughly that no one would ever dare challenge my right to you. The raw honesty in his words should have frightened her. Instead, it ignited something deep in her core, a matching wildness that recognized and responded to his. And what do you want, Thorn? Not just your wolf? You? For a moment, he seemed taken aback by the question, as if no one had bothered to separate the two before. I want... He paused, his amber eyes searching hers. I want a partner. Someone who stands with me, not behind me. Someone who challenges me when I need challenging and supports me when I need support. His voice dropped lower. I want you, Lyra. All of you. But I want you to choose it, not just accept it. The tenderness beneath his strength, the vulnerability beneath his power, it undid her. Rising on her tiptoes, Lyra pressed her lips to his in a soft, tentative kiss. The embrace quickly deepened, fire and tenderness colliding as he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. Breathless, he warned that stopping would soon be impossible, but Lyra, long overlooked and undervalued, met his fierce possessiveness with steady certainty. She chose him, chose the bond, and with a growl of approval, Thorn carried her to the bed. As he whispered mine against her lips, the Alpha and his Luna surrendered to the bond destined for them, setting aside the looming threats beyond their borders for the sacred claiming that would seal their wolves and their hearts together. The next day, a report came in. 12 eastern wolves crossed our borders at dawn, armed and in human form. They took out 2 of our border scouts, wounded, not killed, left them with a message. Thorn's expression hardened. What message? Alpha Mason is invoking the challenge of 3. A heavy silence followed these words. Lyra looked between the men, confusion creasing her brow. What is the challenge of 3? An ancient rite, rarely invoked. It allows an alpha to challenge a mate claim if they believe it was made under false pretenses. It requires 3 tests, mind, body, and spirit to prove the validity of the bond. Lyra straightened her spine, something resolute hardening inside her. Then I'll do it. I'll take the challenge. A new voice joined the conversation, Elder Serena's, as she entered without knocking, her silver braids gleaming in the morning light. Indeed you will, she said, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. Because I believe it's time you learned the truth about your mother, child. The Healing Elder's private quarters were tucked away in the oldest part of the pack house, a cozy set of rooms filled with dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, shelves of ancient books, and countless jars of mysterious substances. A fire burned in the small hearth, filling the space with warmth and the scent of pine. Your mother would be proud of you, the elder said, standing up to Mason, claiming your place beside the Alpha. You said she was a gifted healer. Was that all she was? Serena's hands stilled. No, child. That was not all she was. She turned, fixing Lyra with those sharp amber eyes. Your mother was what the ancient texts call a moon blessed, a rare type of Omega with the ability to channel lunar magic through healing. Magic? But the Northern Pack doesn't have magic users. Everyone knows what they've been told, Serena corrected. The truth is more complicated. The Northern Territories once had many moon-blessed among us, mostly Omegas with healing gifts that extended beyond the physical. They could heal spirits, mend bonds between packmates, even communicate with the moon goddess herself. What happened to them? Fear happened, and ambition. 3 generations ago, Alpha Reed Mason of the Eastern Pack began a campaign against the Blessed, claiming their power threatened traditional pack hierarchies. The war he started decimated the Blessed. Cold understanding washed over Lyra. And my mother? My father? Your mother used her power openly during the border war, trying to save the wounded. And when James Mason, Kira's father, saw what she was doing, he targeted her specifically. Serena's hands tightened. But before she died, Emma performed one final act of magic. She sealed your gift away, deep within your spirit, where no one would detect it, where you would be safe. You're saying I'm like her? I have this power too? The mark appearing on your wrist before your first shift was the first sign, your silver-white wolf, the second. Serena rose, moving to an ancient wooden chest. From it, she withdrew a small object wrapped in faded silver cloth. With this, you can reclaim what was taken from you. Lyra unwrapped the cloth to reveal a pendant, a crescent moon cradling a single star, carved from moonstone, glowing faintly with an inner light. It matched the mark on her wrist exactly. Your mother's talisman, Serena explained, the focus of her power. The pendant must be activated under the light of the full moon, with the blood of your mate to bind your powers to your pack. Once awakened, your abilities will come instinctively. The full moon is tomorrow night, Lyra realized. Part 4. Blood and Magic. The Great Hall had been transformed for the arrival of the Challenge Council. The long tables had been arranged in a U-shape, with 3 ornate chairs at the head, one for each territorial alpha. Pack members lined the sides of the hall, witnesses to the historic proceedings. Lyra had changed into a simple dress of deep blue. At Thorne's insistence, she'd left her hair loose, partially obscuring the claiming bite that marked her as his. Let Mason wonder if the bond had been sealed, he'd reasoned. Any uncertainty on his part was an advantage. They entered the hall together, Thorne's hand at the small of her back. Alpha James Mason already waited, immaculately dressed in clothes that emphasized his wealth and status, and beside him stood Alpha Isolde of the Southern Crescent, her silver-white hair gleaming in the torchlight. We gather tonight to establish the terms of the Challenge of 3, invoked by Alpha James Mason of the Eastern Ridge against the mate bond of Alpha Thorne Black and Luna Lyra Black of the Northern Pines, Marcus announced. As tradition dictates, each of the 3 alphas will select one trial for the challenged mate to undertake. Mason leaned forward. As the challenger, I claim the right to select first, and I choose the trial of body. A murmur ran through the assembled wolves. The trial of body was traditionally the most physically demanding, often involving feats of endurance or strength that could push even an alpha to their limits. Alpha Isolde, as the neutral party, you may select next. The Fey Wolf's strange eyes studied Lyra thoughtfully. I select the trial of mind. Let wisdom be tested alongside strength. And Alpha Black, you will set the terms for the final trial, the trial of spirit. All eyes turned to Thorne. For the trial of spirit, I choose the path of reflection. Luna Lyra will journey to the sacred pools at the heart of Northern Territory. There she will meditate until she receives a vision from her wolf, a vision that I, as her true mate, will be able to describe without having witnessed it. Now, Marcus said, turning to Mason, you must define the specific nature of your chosen trial. What form will the trial of body take? A slow, cruel smile spread across Mason's face. The trial of the hunt. Luna Lyra will be given a 1-hour head start. Then a hunting party of my choosing will pursue her through Northern Territory. She must evade capture from moonrise to moonset, a full night's hunt. Gasps and growls of outrage erupted from the Northern Pack members. The trial of the hunt was rarely used, and for good reason. It placed the challenged mate in genuine danger. Thorne half rose from his seat, barely containing his fury. You go too far, Mason. The Challenge of 3 allows for any trial within our traditions, Mason replied smoothly. The hunt is well documented in pack law. Before Thorne could respond, Lyra placed a restraining hand on his arm. I accept, she said clearly. The trial of the hunt, as Alpha Mason has described it. If I may, Isolde interjected smoothly, as the neutral alpha in these proceedings, I must insist on certain protections. The hunting party will consist of 2 wolves from each territory, Eastern, Southern, and Northern, and they will pursue in wolf form only, with no weapons. For the trial of mind, Isolde specified the labyrinth of questions. Lyra would enter an ancient stone maze and answer 3 riddles about the past, present, and future of the Pax. The terms of all 3 trials have been set, Marcus declared. According to tradition, they must be completed in sequence, with 1 day between each test. Luna Black, the challenge begins tomorrow at dawn with the trial of mind. I understand and accept, Lyra said. I will face these trials and prove the truth of my bond with Alpha Thorn Black. As the formalities concluded, Kira approached Lyra, her expression unreadable. A word, Omega, she said quietly. Alone? Though Thorn was reluctant, Lyra agreed. Once they were out of earshot, Kira glanced nervously over her shoulder. Be careful tomorrow night, she said in a rushed whisper. My brother, he's not what he seems. Lyra studied the girl's face, looking for deception but finding only fear. You mean his magic? The Wendigo? Kira's eyes widened in surprise. You know? How? I figured it out. But why are you warning me? The beta girl's perfect facade cracked slightly, revealing something vulnerable beneath. Because I've seen what he does to those who stand in his way. And because... She hesitated. Because my mother was like yours. Before my father. She couldn't finish the sentence. Your mother was moon-blessed? Kira nodded. Half-blessed. It's why my father chose her to dilute the bloodline under his control. He fears the old powers, but my brother, he wants them, wants to twist them. Why are you telling me this? Why help me when you've made it clear you hate me? I don't hate you. I envied you. She glanced again at her father. I've lived my whole life as a pawn in their games. Maybe it's time someone broke the board. Dawn painted the ancient stone labyrinth in shades of rose and gold. Lyra stood at its entrance, ready to face her first trial. Thorn approached, his face carefully neutral despite the concern she could feel pulsing through their bond. Remember, he said softly, the labyrinth tests wisdom, not merely knowledge. Trust your instincts. His fingers brushed hers briefly. I'll be waiting when you emerge. When, not if, Lyra replied with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Following her wolf's instincts, Lyra navigated the twisting corridors until she reached a small circular clearing within the maze. In its center stood a hooded figure. First Guardian, Lyra greeted. Seeker, it replied. You have found the first chamber. To proceed, you must answer my riddle about the past. The Guardian raised its hands. My riddle is this. What was broken cannot be mended by strength alone, yet strength alone seeks to break it further. I am the first truth forgotten when blood sought power over bone. What am I? Lyra's brow furrowed. The riddle seemed deliberately obscure, laden with references she couldn't quite grasp. What was broken? She thought of pack histories, of old conflicts, of territories divided. Take your time, Seeker, the Guardian said, her tone softer. The answer lies not in facts, but in understanding. Understanding. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the riddle wash over her again. What was broken cannot be mended by strength alone. An image flashed in her mind, her mother, hands glowing with healing light on a battlefield. The moon blessed, she gasped, the answer suddenly clear. The answer is the moon-blessed tradition. It was broken by those who valued alpha strength over healing gifts. Blood, the bloodlines of dominant wolves, sought power over bone, the natural order and balance of the Pax. The Guardian lowered its hood, revealing the silver-braided elder who had accompanied Isolde. Well answered, daughter of Emma. The forgotten truth is indeed the balance that the moon blessed maintained, the understanding that packs need both strength and healing. In the second chamber, the Guardian posed a riddle about the present. I walk on 4 legs through shadow and flame, my hunger unending, my will not my own. Born of forbidden blood, bound by darker still. What casts my shadow across these lands now? Lyra's blood chilled as understanding came instantly. Wendigo, she answered, The creatures attacking the borders. They walk on 4 legs, they're driven by insatiable hunger, and they're being controlled by someone using blood magic. The Guardian's ever-changing features finally settled into a grave expression. Correct, Seeker. But the answer is incomplete. What casts their shadow? Who controls the ancient spirits? Mason's son, she said slowly, the pieces falling into place. He controls them. He has forbidden blood, not just werewolf, but something else, something that gives him access to dark magic. The Guardian's head tilted slightly. And why does he cast this shadow now, Seeker? What purpose drives the summoning? Lyra frowned, thinking hard. What would Mason's son gain from preventing an alliance between northern and southern packs, from keeping the territories divided and suspicious of each other? Then it hit her. What if the goal wasn't Mason's at all? What if the son had his own agenda? Power, she realized aloud. If northern and southern packs formed an alliance, eastern would be weakened, forced to join or be isolated. But with territories in conflict, with trust broken. She looked up at the Guardian. He creates opportunity for himself, a chance to overthrow his own father, perhaps, to seize control in the chaos. A slow, approving smile spread across the Guardian's face. Wisdom indeed, Seeker. The shadow is cast by ambition hidden beneath obedience, by power veiled in submission. He stepped aside, revealing another archway. The final chamber awaits. Tread carefully, for the future's riddles cut deepest of all. In the final chamber, the Guardian appeared as a child with ancient eyes. My riddle is this. 3 paths lie before the divided lands, one of blood, one of shadow, one of light. Blood leads to blood, an endless cycle of death. Shadow consumes all, leaving nothing in its wake. Only light breaks both patterns, but light requires the greatest sacrifice. What must die for the territories to live? After deep reflection, Lyra answered, Fear. What must die is fear. Fear of difference, fear of change, fear of losing power or status or control. Fear that drives wolves to destroy what they don't understand, to hate what challenges their worldview. The Guardian bowed low. You have passed the trial of mind, Lyra Foster, Luna of the Northern Pines. When she emerged with the token that proved her success, Thorn embraced her fiercely. You did it. I knew you would. That night, under the full moon, Lyra knelt beside a natural spring with Thorn and Elder Serena. The time had come to awaken her moon-blessed power. Place the pendant in the water, Serena instructed. Then add 3 drops of your mate's blood to awaken the connection to your pack. Thorn extended his palm over the water. This binds us beyond even the mate bond. My strength becomes yours. My protection extends to your gifts. With a nod, he allowed Serena to make a small cut across his palm. 3 drops of his blood fell into the clear water, spreading like crimson smoke before dissipating. Lyra placed the moonstone in the center of the pool, where it seemed to hover just below the surface, catching and amplifying the moonlight. The water around it began to glow faintly. Now, you must connect with your mother's legacy, Serena said. Reach for the power that sleeps in your blood. Taking a deep breath, Lyra placed her hands on the surface of the water. I am Emma's daughter, she murmured. I am moon-blessed, healer of wolves, bridge between worlds, by blood and bone, by star and stone, by the light of Luna full above, I claim my birthright. The pendant beneath the water flared suddenly, its glow becoming intense. The warmth in her arms erupted into fire, racing through her veins, spreading to her chest, her head, down to her toes. Her mark, Thorn breathed. Look at her wrist. The crescent and star mark was glowing with the same silvery light as the pendant, the lines extending up her arm like luminous vines, branching and spreading across her skin. Light exploded outward from the pool, a shockwave of silver-white energy that rippled through the clearing. Where it touched the herbs Serena had arranged, they burst into bloom despite the season. Where it passed over Thorn, his eyes flared red, his wolf surging forward in response. And in Lyra, something fundamental shifted, a door unlocking, a wall crumbling. Knowledge poured into her mind, instincts awakened in her body. She could feel every living thing in the clearing, Thorn's steady strength, Serena's fragile but enduring flame. "I can see," she whispered, opening eyes that now glowed silver like her wolf's. "I can see everything." Before they could celebrate, one of the warriors burst into the clearing. "Alpha, intruders approaching from the east, 6 of them, moving fast." "Mason's son," Thorn growled. "Kira was right." "Not just him," the warrior added grimly. "Wendigo. At least 4 of the creatures." Lyra rose from beside the pool, the pendant now hanging at her throat. The marks on her skin had dimmed but remained visible, delicate silver lines tracing patterns from her wrists up her arms. "They sensed the awakening," Serena said. "The power called to them, or rather to the one who controls them." Moments later, 4 monstrous creatures emerged from the forest, not wolves, not men, but something in between. Emaciated bodies covered in patchy fur, elongated limbs ending in razor claws, antlered skulls where heads should be, and eyes that burned with unholy fire. The Wendigo. Behind them came 3 wolves in human form, led by Mason's son. Up close, the resemblance to his father was strong, but where Mason's eyes were cold blue, his son's were an unnatural violet, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Well, well," he said, his gaze fixed on Lyra. "The little Omega has found her power at last. How convenient that you've done the hard work of awakening it for me." "Cain Mason," Thorn growled, "you're trespassing on northern territory." Cain's smile was chilling. "I don't think I will leave, Alpha Black. Not when what I've been searching for is right here." His gaze slid to the pendant at Lyra's throat, then to the silver markings on her skin. "Do you have any idea what that power could do in the right hands?" "It's not yours to take," Lyra said calmly. "The moon-blessed gifts belong to those chosen by the goddess." "My mother had the blood too," Cain revealed. "Weaker than yours, but there. My father made sure of it, wanting to control the power while ensuring it wouldn't be too strong." "Is that why you unleashed these abominations?" Thorn demanded. "To prevent an alliance that might threaten your plans?" "Politics has never interested me. Power, on the other hand." Cain stepped forward, the Wendigo moving with him. "Tonight, with the moon at its fullest, is the perfect time to take what should have been mine by birthright." "The blood magic is killing you," Lyra observed, seeing how it clung to him like a parasite. "That's why you need my power. Not just for ambition, but for survival." "Clever little Omega. Yes, there are costs, but once I have your gift, I can heal myself." "And what about these creatures? What about the wolves they've killed?" "Necessary sacrifices," Cain dismissed. "With the blessed power, I could unite all territories, not through fragile alliances, but through strength they couldn't resist." He raised his hands, violet energy crackling between his fingers. "I came for the blessed power, and I will have it. Now." He thrust his hands forward, sending a wave of dark magic hurtling toward Lyra. Acting on pure instinct, she raised her own hands, the silver markings flaring to brilliant life. The 2 forces collided in midair with a crack like thunder. Meanwhile, the Wendigo began to circle around. Thorn shifted into his wolf form, the massive black beast erupting from within him. His warriors emerged from the trees, forming a protective ring. As wolves engaged monsters in tooth-and-claw combat, Lyra focused entirely on Cain. With each passing moment, she felt her own power responding more naturally, more instinctively. "You're fighting the wrong battle, Cain," she called to him, genuine compassion in her voice. "The magic you're using, it's corruption, not power. It's consuming you from within." "Save your pity!" he spat, redoubling his assault. Lyra saw an opening not in his magical attack, but in the man himself. The cords binding the Wendigo to him were thinnest where they connected to his heart. With sudden clarity, she understood what she needed to do, not fight darkness with light, but illuminate the darkness itself. Shifting her stance, Lyra stopped pushing against his magic and instead drew it toward her, creating a channel between them. Kane's expression shifted from determination to confusion, then to alarm as he realized he couldn't break the connection. "What are you doing?" he demanded, trying to pull back his power but finding it now flowing inexorably toward her. "Healing," Lyra answered simply, her markings extending further across her skin. What the Moon Blessed were always meant to do. The dark magic touched her silver light and began to transform, not vanishing, but changing, the corruption burning away to reveal the raw power beneath. Through the connection, Lyra could see into Kane himself, the wounded child beneath the ambitious man. With a final surge of will, she sent a wave of pure moonlight back along the connection between them. It struck Kane like a physical blow, sending him staggering backward with a cry. The violet glow in his eyes flickered, then extinguished, returning them to normal human blue. Around the clearing, the Wendigo faltered, the dark bindings connecting them to Kane dissolving into mist. Without his control, they began to transform, the monstrous aspects melting away to reveal the tortured spirits within, finally released. "What have you done to me?" Kane whispered, staring at his hands. "I feel clean," Lyra supplied gently. "I've burned away the corruption of the blood magic, healed what was broken." Thorn shifted back to human form, approaching cautiously. "The Wendigo?" "Free," Lyra confirmed. "Their spirits can move on now." Kane himself seemed utterly transformed, the arrogance gone from his posture, replaced by a kind of stunned vulnerability. "I don't understand. You could have killed me. Why didn't you?" "Because that's not what this power is for. The Moon Blessed heal. We don't destroy." "I've done terrible things," he whispered. "The blood magic. It changed me, twisted everything." "A common effect of dark magic," came a new voice as Isolde stepped into the clearing. "It promises power, but delivers only addiction and corruption." "I'll answer for what I've done," Kane said quietly. "The attacks, the Wendigo, it was all me, not my father." "Your father has much to answer for as well," Thorn replied. "The persecution of the Blessed, the border wars, the death of Lyra's parents, these are crimes that cannot be simply forgotten." "No," Lyra agreed, "but perhaps they can be healed in time." "The trial of spirit awaits you tomorrow," Isolde reminded her, "and after that, the hunt. Mason will not surrender his ambitions easily, even with his son's plans exposed." "I know," Lyra nodded, "but I'm ready now." Part 5. Queen of Moon and Shadow. The sacred pools lay at the heart of Northern Territory, a place of ancient power where generations of pack leaders had communed with their wolves. For the trial of spirit, Lyra knelt at the water's edge, the full moon reflected perfectly on its still surface. Around her stood the witnesses to this final test, Thorn and the Northern elders, Isolde and her Southern representatives, and Mason with his Eastern delegation, including a subdued Kane and an uncharacteristically quiet Kira. "Luna Lyra will now enter the path of reflection," Marcus announced. "She will meditate until her wolf grants her a vision. Upon her return, she will whisper this vision to me alone. Then Alpha Black, who will remain here under guard, must describe the same vision. If their accounts match, the bond is proven true." Lyra closed her eyes and let her consciousness sink into the pools. The world around her faded, replaced by a landscape of silver mist and shadow. Here, in this place between worlds, she felt her wolf's presence more strongly than ever. "What must I see?" she asked silently. "The truth," her wolf replied, her voice clear as moonlight. "About us, about him, about what's to come." The mist parted, revealing a scene that took Lyra's breath away. 3 wolves stood on a high cliff overlooking the territories, a massive black alpha, a silver-white female at his side, and between them, a pup with fur that shimmered between shadow and light. Below them, wolves of all three packs ran together across a landscape unmarred by border markers or territory stones. As she watched, she understood the vision's meaning. This was the future that could be if the packs united. The pup represented the blending of alpha strength and blessed healing, a new generation that would bridge the divides of the past. When Lyra emerged from her trance, tears streaked her face. She rose on slightly unsteady legs and approached Marcus, whispering her vision into his ear with precise detail. The elder nodded gravely, then turned to Thorn. "Alpha Black, what did your mate see in her vision?" Without hesitation, Thorn described the exact same scene: the cliff, the three wolves, the united packs below. Word for word, detail for detail, his account matched Lyra's perfectly. Murmurs of awe rippled through the assembled witnesses. Even Mason's face showed something like reluctant respect. "The trial of spirit is complete," Marcus declared. "Luna Lyra has passed the second test. The final trial, the hunt, will begin tomorrow at moonrise." As the gathering dispersed, Mason approached Lyra and Thorn. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly, "but don't celebrate yet. The hunt is where true strength is tested. My chosen hunters are the finest trackers in the Eastern Territories. And they will fail," Thorn replied with quiet confidence, "just as your other attempts to separate us have failed." Mason's cold eyes narrowed. "We shall see." Later, in the privacy of their quarters, Lyra nestled against Thorn's chest, drawing comfort from his warmth. "Are you afraid?" he asked softly, his fingers tracing the silver marks that now adorned her skin permanently. "Yes," she admitted, "but not of failing. I'm afraid of what comes after." "After?" "After I pass the hunt. After Mason is forced to acknowledge our bond. What then? The territories have been divided for generations. Changing that won't be easy." Thorn's arms tightened around her. "No, it won't. But if any Luna could unite the packs, it's you, the Omega who defied expectations, the Moon Blessed who chose healing over vengeance." Lyra tilted her face up to his. "We'll do it together." His kiss was a promise, a seal more binding than even the mate bond that hummed between them. The hunt began at moonrise the following night. Lyra stood at the edge of Northern Territory, dressed in simple clothing that would allow for easy movement. Around her neck hung the moonstone pendant, now permanently alight with inner fire. "1 hour head start," Marcus reminded her. "Then the hunters will be released. You must evade capture until dawn." Thorn approached, his expression tightly controlled. Pack law prevented him from accompanying her or directly assisting, but nothing could stop him from offering final advice. "Stay downwind," he murmured. "Use water to mask your scent. And remember, you don't need to outfight them, just outrun and outlast them." Lyra nodded, squeezing his hand. "I'll see you at dawn." With that, she turned and sprinted into the forest, her newly awakened wolf strength propelling her swiftly through the trees. She had a plan, one that relied not on brute force, but on the wisdom and power she'd claimed in the previous trials. For the first hour, she ran straight and fast, putting as much distance as possible between herself and the starting point. Then, reaching a swift-flowing stream, she waded upstream for nearly a mile before emerging on rocky ground that would hold no scent. As the moon rose higher, she felt the hunters begin their pursuit. Through her moon-blessed senses, she could detect their presence as disturbances in the forest's energy, 6 wolves moving with purpose through her territory. Rather than running blindly, Lyra moved strategically, using her knowledge of the land and her heightened senses to stay one step ahead. When the hunters drew close, she called upon her blessed powers to mask her presence, blending her energy with that of the forest until she became nearly invisible to normal wolf senses. Hours passed, the moon traced its path across the sky. Twice hunters came within yards of her hiding place, only to move on, confused by the lack of trail. The eastern wolves grew increasingly frustrated, while the southern trackers seemed almost amused by the chase. Near midnight, Lyra sensed a new presence joining the hunt, Alpha Mason himself, breaking the rules to ensure his victory. Anger flared within her, quickly replaced by calm determination. If Mason wanted to cheat, he would learn what it meant to challenge a moon blessed on the night of her power. Shifting to her wolf form, Lyra raced toward the heart of the territory, to the very sacred pools where she'd completed the trial of spirit. There, with the moonlight reflecting on the water, she would make her stand. When she arrived, she shifted back to human form and waded into the pools until she stood knee-deep in the center. Taking the pendant in her hand, she called upon the full extent of her power. Silver light emanated from her skin, reflecting off the water in dazzling patterns. She didn't have to wait long. Mason burst into the clearing in wolf form, his gray fur bristling with triumph when he saw her seemingly trapped in the water. Behind him came the 6 official hunters, including Kira, who had insisted on joining the eastern contingent. "Alpha Mason," Lyra called out calmly, "you've broken the terms of the hunt by joining without authorization. Does your honor mean so little?" The gray wolf snarled, then shifted to human form. "Clever girl," he spat, "but not clever enough. You've cornered yourself. My hunters surround you. There's nowhere to run." "I'm not running anymore," Lyra replied, the silver markings on her skin beginning to glow brighter. "This ends now." With a gesture from Mason, the hunters began to close in. But before they could reach the water's edge, the pools erupted with silver light. A shockwave of energy rippled outward, freezing the hunters in place. "What is this magic?" Mason demanded, struggling against the invisible force holding him. "The truth," Lyra answered simply. She raised her hands, and the water around her rose in shimmering columns, forming a perfect mirror in the air. In its surface, images began to form. Mason striking down Emma Foster on the battlefield, ordering the persecution of other blessed, plotting with his allies to prevent the alliance between northern and southern packs. "You would challenge my bond with Thorn," Lyra said, her voice carrying power now, "when your own history is stained with the blood of true mates torn apart for your ambition? You would invoke sacred law when you've broken it time and again?" Mason's face had gone pale. Around the clearing, the hunters watched in shock as the evidence of his crimes played out in the magical mirrors. "You can't prove any of this," he hissed, though his confidence was clearly shaken. "I don't need to prove it," Lyra responded. "The moon goddess already knows, and so does your daughter." All eyes turned to Kira, who had shifted back to human form, tears streaming down her face as she watched her mother's story revealed in the water mirrors. "You told me she died in childbirth," Kira whispered, her voice breaking. "You said the blessed blood was a curse. But you killed her. You killed her because she was trying to heal, not harm." "She was weak," Mason growled, "just like you're weak, just like all Omegas are weak." "No, father," came another voice as Cain stepped into the clearing, drawn by the surge of power. "She was strong in a way you never understood. And so is Lyra." The water mirrors dissolved, splashing back into the pools. Lyra lowered her hands, the silver light fading from her skin. "I could punish you for what you've done, Alpha Mason. For my parents, for the other blessed, for breaking the terms of your own challenge. But that's not what this power is for." She stepped forward, water streaming from her body. "The hunt is over. I have evaded capture until dawn approaches. By the terms of the challenge of 3, I have passed all trials. My bond with Alpha Thorn Black is true and unbreakable." As if summoned by her words, Thorn appeared at the edge of the clearing, Marcus and the other witnesses with him. The moonlight caught the fury in his eyes as he took in the scene, Mason and the hunters still held in place by Lyra's power, the water still rippling with magical energy. "What happened here?" he demanded. "Alpha Mason decided to join the hunt personally," Lyra explained, stepping out of the pools to stand beside her mate. "And I decided it was time for truth rather than games." Marcus looked to the other hunters. "Is this true?" Did Alpha Mason violate the terms of the hunt? One by one they nodded, even the Eastern wolves unwilling to lie in the face of what they'd witnessed. Then the challenge is forfeit, Marcus declared. By breaking sacred law, Alpha Mason has invalidated his claim. Luna Lyra has proven her bond true through all 3 trials. Let no one question it again. Mason's face contorted with rage, but before he could speak, Alpha Isolde stepped forward, her strange golden eyes glinting in the pre-dawn light. The Southern Crescent Pack recognizes Luna Lyra Black as the true mate of Alpha Thorn Black, she announced formally, and we offer alliance to the Northern Pines under their joint leadership. As do I, Kane said suddenly, stepping in front of his father. As the heir to the Eastern Ridge, I pledge alliance with the Northern-Southern Coalition, with Luna Lyra as our mediator and healer. You have no authority, Mason began, only to be cut off by his own daughter. He speaks for me as well, Kira declared, moving to stand beside her brother, and for any Eastern wolf who values truth over pride. The sun's first rays broke over the eastern horizon, signaling the official end of the hunt. As the light touched Lyra's silver markings, they gleamed like newly forged metal, a visible symbol of the new era dawning with this day. Thorn's arm encircled her waist, drawing her against his side. It seems my mate has accomplished in one night what generations of alphas couldn't achieve through years of negotiation, he said, pride evident in his voice. Lyra leaned into his strength, suddenly exhausted but deeply content. Not just me, she corrected gently. Us. Together. The gathered wolves, northern, southern, and eastern alike, lifted their voices in a spontaneous howl of acknowledgement. Pack boundaries might still exist on maps, but in that moment, as wolves of all 3 territories joined in harmony, something new was born. Later, as Lyra and Thorn stood on the balcony of the pack house overlooking their unified territories, she was reminded of her spirit vision, the black wolf and the silver wolf standing side by side, watching over a united pack. The future she'd glimpsed was already taking shape. What will happen to Mason? She asked, watching the Eastern delegation prepare to depart below. The former Alpha stood apart from the others, his once proud posture now diminished. He'll face the Eastern Pack Council, Thorn replied. Kane and Kira will present evidence of his crimes. I doubt he'll retain his position. And Kane? After everything he did with the Wendigo? Thorn's expression softened slightly at the concern in her voice. Your healing purged the dark magic from him, but actions still have consequences. Isolde has offered to take him to the Southern Territories for a time, to learn from their healers, to understand the proper use of whatever gifts he may still possess. Lyra nodded, relieved. Despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to wish punishment on someone who had been so clearly twisted by forces beyond his control. And what about us? She asked, turning to face her mate fully. What does a Luna do when there's no longer a war to prevent? Thorn's hands came up to frame her face, his amber eyes warm with love and pride. She heals what's been broken. She rebuilds what was destroyed. She reminds us all of what we can be when we stop fearing our differences. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek. And if the vision you shared is anything to go by, she also helps create the next generation of wolves who will carry forward this new unity. The implication made warmth flood Lyra's cheeks. A pup with fur of shadow and light, she murmured, remembering the third wolf from her vision. Our pup, Thorn confirmed, his voice dropping to that rumble that still made her heart race. When you're ready. And if I said I was ready now? She asked, rising on her tiptoes to brush her lips against his. His growl of approval vibrated through her. Then I would say your Alpha is at your service, my Luna. Their kiss deepened, the mate bond between them humming with renewed intensity. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Lyra rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. From the courtyard below came the sounds of pack life, wolves of all 3 territories mingling, sharing news, forming new bonds. The scent of healing hung in the air, as tangible as the moonstone pendant that now never left her throat. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked softly. "When you first saw me at the choosing ceremony?" Thorn's chuckle rumbled beneath her ear. "I imagined many things when I first scented you, little wolf, but even I couldn't have dreamed what you would become, what we would become together." Lyra smiled, her fingers tracing the royal mark at her wrist that matched his own. From Forgotten Omega to Luna of the United Pax, her journey had been one of discovery and transformation. But the greatest change wasn't in her status or even in her awakened powers. It was in her heart, in the certainty that she had found where she truly belonged. "My mate," she whispered, the words both a statement and a promise. "My alpha, my home, my queen," he returned, pressing his lips to her forehead. "My miracle." As the sun rose fully over the territories, northern, southern, and eastern now joined in tentative alliance, Lyra felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The orphaned Omega, the wolfless girl, the forgotten shadow, those identities had fallen away, revealing who she had always been meant to become. Luna of the northern pines, mate to the Alpha King, moon-blessed healer. And now, recognized and acknowledged by all, she could add one more title to that list, the one who had united the territories at last, not through force or fear, but through the power of a bond that transcended all boundaries, Queen of Moon and Shadow, just as destiny had always intended.